All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Beyond the Deck podcast. I am Beata Rouleau, founder CEO of Compass Consulting, where we help visionary CEOs turn chaotic revenue systems into predictable growth through RevOps systems that actually work. So I am super excited to have Kayleigh Graham here. She is the head of partnerships and growth at Telleroo, and super excited to learn about her role, and what Telleroo is doing. So Kayleigh, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we could just kick it off and tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, anything we should know that led you to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. If we take it right back as a youngster, I very much wanted to be a plastic surgeon. That was the idea. That's very much what I was going for. And then as kind of moved through education, I realized that the thought of like another 10 years of studying really wasn't for me. And so at 17, started looking at options and ended up actually doing an apprenticeship with one of the big banks here in the UK, under commercial banking. So that's what I was doing, looking after construction companies and agricultural businesses along the south coast of the UK. Loved it, but very much wanted the opportunity to go and work in the big city. And so I moved into a role in corporate banking in London, looking after big housing associations, local government, that kind of thing. Enjoyed it, but it was too corporate for me. I realized that actually I didn't like the rigidity of that environment, and that I wanted to take new ideas and be able to run with them fast and try new things. And actually, in an environment like that, that needs 6, 7 levels of sign off and takes 6 months to make a decision, that's just not something that happens. And so at the time, said bank was looking at starting up a new business kind of to the side of things to test things out. And that was very much a tech focused business. And so had the opportunity to move across there and look after strategic projects, which was great and very much gave me a taste of startup life with the security of still getting paid by a big corporate, which was great. And then realized I was ready to dive all in. And so I left there and moved across to a much smaller startup business that we then grew from being teeny tiny to a team of over 60. And then 3.5, nearly 4 years ago, I joined Telleroo at a point where we were a team of about 10 people, very much looking to scale, looking to grow, not profitable, not in that fun stage yet. And so I joined very much with the vision of how do we grow our partnership channel? How do we grow our accountancy partner channel? And that is what I've been responsible for ever since.
Yeah, okay. That's fantastic. I will ask you some more questions about that after you explain. For people who are not familiar with Telleroo, tell us what Telleroo does, what problems you solve, who you serve.
So Telleroo is a bulk payment automation platform. And the whole idea is that business owners here in the UK, the way that they have to process payments to their suppliers and to their staff is particularly inefficient. They are either manually transposing information from spreadsheets into banking systems, dealing with clunky systems that require cards and card readers and PIN codes and all of these things to be able to get those payments out on time. And so what we are seeing is a real switch to business owners in the UK outsourcing their finance function to accountants, to third-party bookkeepers, to outsourced finance companies. And so as part of that, those companies need a way to streamline that process without having access to clients' bank accounts. And that's very much where we come in. So we connect up to various accounting softwares, various payroll platforms, pull all of that information in, and all the business owner has to do is take a look at that, make sure they're happy with it, approve it, and make one payment instead of 10, 50, 100, whatever it might be.
Oh, that's really interesting. So it's linking, a business owner would link all of their bank account, their accounting software as well. And then is Telleroo, is it doing the accounting side or the
We
payment
are
side
very much
primarily?
doing, yeah, very much the payment side. So we will pick up
Okay.
the information of like outstanding invoices from accounting software. We'll pull in payroll data, payroll software, and go, right, here we go. Here's everything that needs paying. Third party or business owner can go, yeah, happy to pay all of that. And then they make one payment that covers the total amount instead of logging in and making separate payments.
That sounds like a dream because, yeah, business owners needing to figure out, in QuickBooks and Zero, wherever, which things are paid, which things aren't, when do they need to be paid. It is such a headache, and it takes them away from what they're actually good at, which is typically not finance and payments and things like that.
I was gonna say, I always say business owners don't set up businesses to sit making payments, right? And so it's very much when you look at the life cycle of a business, actually from an accounting perspective and from an automation perspective, a lot of the parts along the journey have been automated. We've taken receipt capture and they now have apps to do that piece. We have got all of these processes that have been heavily automated, or at least we've brought in software that make that job a lot easier. And yet, when we look at payments, it's often the thing that's been left with business owner. And that's often because of the risk associated with it, actually the complexity of it, the relationships that are often associated with it. If you don't pay your staff on time, that's going to be particularly damaging. If you don't pay your biggest suppliers on time, again, that's really going to damage those relationships. And so it's something we've always left in the hands of business owner. But actually, it's one of the things that if you can get that process right, is a really easy thing to take away that adds tons of value and frees up lots of time.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Can you talk me through, just for anyone that's listening, like who is the perfect ICP? Like if someone's business owner and they're experiencing this problem, who is that person?
Yeah, so we have two main channels. One is the accountancy practice side. So if you are an accountancy firm of kind of 11 to 50 people, 3 to 5 partners, maybe that kind of 3 to 500 client mark, that's where we see real opportunity for you to build out your service line and introduce payments as a service alongside bookkeeping, alongside payroll. And then the flip side of that is our direct proposition, which is to business owners themselves. And that I typically say, if you are paying more than 5 staff, more than 5 suppliers a month, and you have a process where you are already ordering the collection of invoices into your accounting software, then now is the perfect time to pick that up and look at how we automate the back end of that process for payments.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. So I like the accounting, payments as a service. This is an add-on value to them, or it can be directly to a business owner. That makes a lot
Absolutely.
of sense. Okay, so I know you're a whiz. You're very good at the partnerships and growth side. So I would love to learn just a little bit more about when you came into Telleroo and your experience at other organizations. But what were the things you looked at to determine where how to make partnerships, what were the right partnerships? Because that is something I see a lot of clients wanting to explore, but it's really hard to know where to start with that. So I would love any insight you have on that.
I think the biggest thing that people go wrong with partnerships is that often when they go into it, they're not looking at it as a partnership. And when I say that, what I mean is a partnership needs to have benefit to both sides. And quite often, when I see people kind of thinking about who could we partner with, what they actually mean is who's going to bring us business, who's going to make us money. They're not looking at it going, where can we add real value on the other side? And I think that was the biggest thing for us is that actually we initially, when I joined Telleroo, it was like, we work with some accountants, let's go and get more accountants. And in theory, that sounds great, but actually sitting back and reflecting, going, where can we add value? Where is there going to be an opportunity for these businesses to make money? We can then define an ICP from that. And then the proposition, when I go to them, is really, really clear around this is what we can do for you. And in return, here's what we're getting out of that. And that makes it a much more kind of mutually beneficial conversation. And it makes people want to come to the table. I'm sure you get lots of cold outreach emails, etc., like I do all the time. People going, hey, we've got this great opportunity for you. Let's have a conversation. We can do something for you. When I read those emails, all I actually read is, you want me to buy something. And that is fine. Of course, you want me to buy something, but actually, often what those emails lack is, here's what we can actually do for you. Here's what we can actually deliver for you. And in return, yes, we will make some money and we will get something from it, but here's what we can give you. And that slight reframe makes all the difference. So, from an accountancy side, it was very much understanding who our ICP is, how do we talk to them, how do we actually go in and add value. And then it not being a case of trying to give them something and be like, okay, off you go, now pay us lots of money. It was very much a depth of understanding around the challenges that they had. I have spent more hours than I care to confess reading regulatory documents from supervisory bodies for accountants here in the UK, understanding the intricacies of what they can do, what they can't do, what they have to report and what they don't, what that looks like, so that when I go into those conversations, I am incredibly prepared to talk about what it is that they have to do on their side and how we fix that for them. On the commercial partnership side of things, it's been slightly different. And that has been more about understanding what the market looks like enough to, again, be able to proposition them from it. Here's what we can do for your business. And quite often when you have a conversation with a business and you say, what's your goal for the next year? A lot of them will say growth. And you go, okay, that's great. And the next conversation is, where's that growth going to come from? Is that coming from new business or is that coming from existing clients? I think most people are quite aware that it's roughly 3 times more expensive to win new business than it is to expand. And so most go, yeah, we want to get more from our existing client base. And you go, okay, how are you going to do that? And they go, we're going to upsell. And that's often where the end of that sentence is, because when you push further as to how are you going to upsell, that's when they start going, well, our reps are going to call people and ask them if they want more services. I can't remember the last time someone called me and said, do you want more services? And I had jumped at the opportunity to spend more money, right? That's often not what happens. So understanding and stepping back and saying, okay, well, actually, if you have an existing client base of 1,000 clients that your payroll software runs payroll for, if we could add payments into that, and per client that generates X amount of new revenue, and we can roll that out across even 50% of that client base, that generates X amount and gets you 20% closer to your target for the year. It becomes a bit of a no-brainer. Tell them you can do all the work from them from a collateral perspective in terms of supporting marketing and comms and all the kind of legalities of it. These conversations become much more of a should we, shouldn't we, into a how do we. And I always kind of like to think of it a little bit of almost like a parenting tactic of when you deal with toddlers, giving them yes or no answers is not good because they will always choose no. And so it's kind of, it's not do you want a snack, it's do you want this or this. And that's very much how I approach partnerships, is almost assuming the answer is always yes. And it's just a case of which option we're taking from a structure perspective.
I love so much of what you said in that, because even thinking about, yes, often it is like, hey, let's do a partnership. Of course, we are selfish. We have our own reasons that we're doing what we're doing. But if you can take that moment to pause and think, how can I truly frame this to where this is a value add for you? Like, I am going to give you value without anything in return. I think that's the first place, is like, can you give something of value without getting anything in return? And it is riskier because some people might just say, great, thanks. Not sending anything back. You're not going to get a return. But it can start partnerships on a really strong foundation. So I love that you said about partnerships. And then for the upsell, I'm actually going through this with a client right now, and we're thinking through our current client base and how could we expand. And I love the fact that you brought up, yes, we can bring in new business, but can we expand our new business? Not by just saying, hey, we're going to charge more, or what services do you want? But can we get really close to our customer to see what are the adjacent services or technology that would add exponential value to them, to where then it's easy. We're adding value, and in return, they will exchange, money in exchange for value. So I just want to double tap on all of that. I thought that was brilliant.
Absolutely. And so like from our side, our clients are particularly sticky. Once you are a service where people are paying their staff, they're paying their suppliers, you become an incredibly sticky product. And so our churn is very, very low. And so again, from a partnership perspective, it's understanding what are the challenges that they have. If for us, for example, one of the challenges they have is churn, then we become a really great option because I can go, hey, actually, if you integrate with us and we're over here, we know our churn's incredibly low. We're very sticky. And so if your product makes us even easier, they're not going anywhere because they are then super, super locked in. So you almost get the benefit of our lack of churn by bringing them in on your side, provided that you continue doing all the good things you're meant to be doing, right?
Yeah, that's great. So that's the partnership side. And then on the general growth side, are there any other channels, tools that you're using that you're seeing work well for Telleroo as in your go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, the growth side has been interesting as a whole. Partnerships and the accountancy channel have been the biggest drivers of that in terms of that growth. But I think the other thing that's been interesting through the growth angle is the growth of our actual team. It's not something that I am directly responsible for in terms of across the entire business, but actually naturally as we grow revenue, client numbers, etc., that has to happen. And so that's been really, really interesting, is looking at, okay, from a pipeline perspective, what have we got coming in and where are the bottlenecks going to be in the business that are going to present issues for us? And like onboarding is a huge one there, in that it's all well and good us going out and winning this new business. But if their first interaction with the rest of the business is onboarding and it's slow and it's painful, that's going to be really, really tricky. And so there have been multiple points across the last 4 years that myself, our head of marketing, our COO, etc., have had to take a step back, really sit down, map our processes and understand where are our bottlenecks, where are we like potentially letting customers down, where is there an opportunity for us to create a bad experience, and how do we get ahead of that and fix that? Because actually, alongside the kind of channels that we have, another great thing has been referrals, and those referrals don't happen if we're not consistently delivering that really great service. Actually, a big part of it is almost taking a step back and looking internally and making sure that we are geared up for the growth from an internal perspective so that we can go out and push really hard.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And not solving the problem, it's like not solving it till it's actually at least close to a problem. I see a lot of people be like, we need the whole flow, we need all of this perfect to scale, and then they don't have the volume. And so, yeah, it's such a good question of what's the bottleneck of, I always like asking, like, hey, if we do 10x volume, like where's
Well,
the team going to absolutely crumble? And doesn't mean we have to solve it right now, but it is funny. Onboarding is typically that is a consistent thing that I hear. Everyone's focused about growth and increasing volume and product, but you forget there has to be a bridge between those things.
100%. And I think it's often because, particularly in that like initial startup scale up phase, the answer is we just get customers on any way we can. And so processes might be broken, they might be clunky, and you just make it work because we need the business to come on board and get live. And that, like you say, that works until you 10x volume on top of that. And all of a sudden, all of those manual workarounds, all of those, we can just do this, all falls apart, and you start to really see some pretty hefty cracks. And we've definitely had that before where we've identified a problem in advance, we've continued building, continued doing what we're doing, and then we go, okay, that problem is coming up pretty fast now, and now we need to do something. But because we saw it coming from a while away, we've already thought about what the solutions to that might be. And so although we haven't solved it yet, we'd already kind of done the thinking, and we went, okay, well, we'd already shortlisted it to two potential solutions. And now we'll just investigate out of those, which is going to be the fastest, the most cost efficient, the best, whatever it is. And we can then implement really fast instead of going, we had no idea this was going to happen. We need to do all this thinking. And we're able to at least do the kind of first part of that in advance so that when we do need to address it, we've got options.
Yeah, that is so smart. So in the heat of the moment where it's like, okay, the world feels like it's burning down. Okay, we have a plan, it's written down. Now we're just putting that into action.
100%. And I think from like a business values perspective, one of our values is that we always act with integrity, both customer facing and behind closed doors. And actually, often I think the time that integrity slips in businesses is under pressure. It's when things are on fire, it's when things aren't going well, is when that tends to slip. And so again, stepping back in advance and being able to see these things coming mean that in those heat of the moment things, we're not as torn by emotion or rash decisions. We can keep that integrity there because we've had space to breathe and think about it. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes things come up and you just have to address them there and then. But it does mean that we've often had a situation, at least previously, we've been able to think about, we can reflect on, we can pull ideas from there and make sure that we do maintain that level of integrity through every interaction.
I'd love to ask you about that integrity piece because I know this is off script from some of the questions, so roll with me if you can. But I would love to hear how Telleroo, like, how is that actually implemented? Like, I mean, the fact that that was top of mind for you, it's very clear that value has been communicated and communicated consistently. So, any advice for how others who have values, a lot of people write their values down and then they live in a planning document somewhere that gets reviewed once a year. So, any advice on how people can actually make those values incorporated into their business?
There's a few things I think. I think one is they need to be active. Like you said, it's no good just writing them down and then forgetting about them. They need to be something that is lived and breathed. And so we have bi-weekly entire business updates that everyone gets on. And the first slide every single week is our values on screen. We run through them. And without a doubt, there's never a week where they come up on screen and we go, okay, we'll just skip that slide. Every single week, every bi-weekly, our CEO reads through all the values on the screen. And like this week, for example, he highlighted an example of where someone in the business had lived that value of integrity. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday and they said X, Y, and Z. And that really just demonstrates what we're talking about here. And so we try and keep them live with like real examples of what people are doing. I think the other thing is very much around bringing the team into what those values are. It's great if a founder or CEO has an idea of what he or she wants the values to be, but actually getting the team involved in that is really important. So we have done exercises previously where we get the team to basically fill in questionnaires and surveys. And some of it is brand related. It's like, oh, how serious should the brand be? Should it be a really serious brand? Should it be a more fun brand? Those kind of things. But we also ask some questions like, what are our business values? What do you think they are? And what's really interesting is you can start to see the words the team are using consistently. And that might be really positive. And you might see words like, we have integrity in that. And you can be like, great, that's a great brand value. And we 100% stand by that. You might also see some words in there that you don't like, but at least then you know what the issues are and what you need to address. So I think that's a really, really important thing as well. And then lastly is the kind of open and public channels of communication. That's big for us. We have lots and lots of Slack channels. They are all open. People can join them. People can see the conversation that's going on. And we have moved to a culture where we have conversations about things really publicly. And that's not done to shame people or to call people out in a negative way. It's that actually if we can see there's an issue or a problem or something that needs solving and we talk about that in an open public forum, it means there's nothing that's hidden. There's nothing sneaky happening. And so when we talk about having integrity, we show that in the business. There's no one hiding information. We're all having these conversations very openly. Anyone in theory can jump in with an opinion and say they don't agree. And that happens sometimes. There might be a conversation where people are coming to a conclusion and someone will go, hey guys, I'm not sure that that's who we are as a business. And I don't think that's what we should be doing. But if that conversation happened secretly in a private channel somewhere, no one would know and action would be taken. And later on, someone in the business might see that and go, oh, that doesn't feel quite right. But again, because they're done in these open public ways, people are able to be challenged, and it's not done as a call out or a negative thing. It actually just feels like we all are on the same team and we all know what we're striving for. But that takes time. When we first started doing that and moved from private to public channels, there were people who said, when I get tagged in a thread, I feel a bit uncomfortable. I feel like I'm in trouble. And it took a lot of time, and we had to make sure that management were having those conversations very publicly. So it wasn't just us going in and calling out the teams. Actually, they could see us having those conversations between ourselves and very much modeling that work as well.
That is so cool and terrifying. It's like letting people see how the sausage is made. And actually, you do have to be open to being wrong, be open to, it's not a top-down approach of, nope, what we say goes from a management perspective. It's, hey, if I'm missing something, please call me, kindly, but call me out on that so I can see a different perspective.
100%. And I always say to people, like, our leadership team probably disagree on things more than anyone would ever know externally, right? But that's because we have created an environment that feels incredibly safe to share opinions, to share that we don't agree with something, and to challenge it and to walk it through and then come to a conclusion together. And sometimes that means that we get to a point where we're almost taking a vote, right? And someone might have an opinion on something and everyone else really disagrees and thinks we should do something else. And we kind of come to a decision, and we have got very good at a leadership team of going, do you know what? That's fine. Like, if everyone else is in agreement on this, I will back it and I will support it 100%. And that's one thing we are good at, is you might not get your own way, but if we collectively decide something, then we all get behind it and we give it 100%.
And you never get to hold, if it doesn't work, you don't get to hold it over somebody's head. It is, no, we all made this decision at the end, and we're going to give it our best shot. We're not going to sabotage. We're not going to, that is amazing. Thanks for sharing all of that. I think that will be super helpful. I had one last big question for you. Just thinking about, you're in finance and technology, and fintech is an interesting one where it's very regulated, like a lot of compliance, but then we're also in the startup space. And so how do you balance that, like, move fast and break things with, we can't break things because this is people's money? Like, how are you balancing that at Telleroo?
So we have been very, very fortunate to have a great compliance team in place. And I think that would probably be my biggest piece of advice, is that when building a kind of fintech startup, is make sure you have at least one person who knows the finite boundaries. And I always say, I am the person in the business that pushes those boundaries to the absolute limit. My job is growth. And so I want that growth by any means necessary, effectively, right? And so if there's a gray area, I want to be in the gray area. I want to get right up to the line of where we can go. But having a compliance team that have been able to go, yes, 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 hard stop, has been so important to that. It's hard to find people that fit that mold of being very compliant and driven in that way, but that also understand the need for a business to grow and want to push that boundary. That is a really hard balance to find. And we have been very, very fortunate to find people for our compliance team that have been able to do that. But I do think it's a balancing act. I think it's a balancing act between, people that are very compliant and very blue-brained and understand how things have to operate. And then you're almost big thinker, typical startup people that want to push and break the mold. I think because it is fintech and there is FCA regulation, all of those things, we have to balance that very, very carefully. And it comes back to what we were just talking about creating an environment where that can exist. I cannot tell you the number of times that me and our compliance team go to war effectively, right? And we're on the same side. We both want the business to grow and to get better, but it's me pushing the boundaries as hard as possible and them saying, no, we just can't do that. And we go back and forth. Is there a way? And what if we do this? And what if we do that? And they have had to entertain so many of those conversations from me and our kind of front end commercial team. But that's how we've been able to expand risk appetite on some things and investigate and say, actually, we can do that thing. And there are other times where it is a hard no. And I have to go back and say, we just can't do that. And so the honest answer is, it's a real balancing act. There isn't an easy solution to it, but I truly believe it all comes back to culture and values and creating an environment where those two things can exist at the same time, because otherwise you will just create real friction and a real difficult situation.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it is essential to have that where someone is pushing the boundaries, because if you don't question, compliance, legal, if you look at it from one angle, yes, it's something else. But if you look at it at a slightly different angle, you actually might be like, wait, we might find a different way around this, or is that actually what it means? Could we approach it this way? And so having someone that's doing that, but then
Exactly.
having if they say no, it's a okay, like you've at least listened, we've explored different options, but we're not gonna go into the dark gray area. We're gonna lightly explore it, and if we
Yeah.
feel good about it, we'll move forward. That's amazing.
Exactly that. And I always say
Oh,
compliance, as I say, compliance want you to be as compliant as possible. And I want us to just be compliant. So it is that balancing act. There is a gap between we are compliant and we are as compliant as possible. And it's like you say, it's how far into that box do we go?
yes. What risks are you comfortable with? Because sometimes, yes, compliant versus completely compliant, there are risks associated, but the risks might be worth it. Like, yeah, I'll leave that there. I love that. So, heading into 2026, what are things that Telleroo, what should we be keeping an eye out for? What are you and the team focused on in this new year?
For us this year, it's really about more of the same, in all honesty. In our space, there have been lots of newcomers to the market, lots of people that are trying to disrupt the way things have been done, etc. But what we find is that actually payments is a space where people want reliability, they want consistency, they want a product that they know works and that their teams and their suppliers get paid on time. And so for us, it's really about just continuing to build on top of the kind of robust product that we already have, continuing to make things like our mobile app even stronger, making customer journeys even stronger, making our partnerships and the journeys that customers go through on that even better, and creating those moments where customers go, wow, that was amazing. So there isn't anything this year that we are trying to do that is kind of crazy different, necessarily. This year is very much about just stabilizing and growth on what we already have, so that we end this year incredibly strong, and in a place where we can go, yeah, actually now it's time for something new and something big.
Right? No, that's amazing. And if people want to connect with you, connect with Telleroo, what would be the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, LinkedIn, just Kayleigh Graham on LinkedIn. Please do connect with me over there. Always happy to have a chat. And from a Telleroo perspective, the Telleroo LinkedIn is great. We post lots of updates from a product perspective on there, or actually through the website. If you want to see more about the product, you can register for demos, access demo accounts, all that stuff on our website, which is just www.telleroo.com.
Amazing. Okay, I'll be sure to have that included in the show notes. Kayleigh, you have shared so much wisdom from partnerships to values to actual team management. So thank you so much for your time. This has been amazing.
Thank you for having me.